All right. So have you ever like completely messed up trying to be nice? Like the other day I was with a friend and we were trying to figure out what to eat and I was like, "Oh, anything's good, you pick." But it turns out they were totally stuck and needed me to actually, give some input.
Oh, yeah.
This communication, right? Easier said than done.
Right.
And that's why you're here, ready to really level up the way you connect with people. And we're not just talking about like avoiding arguments, but actually building stronger bonds with the people that, really matter. So we are diving into the script. It's got a ton of really practical communication advice. It's almost like we're dissecting like a blueprint together for better communication. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and one of the things that really stood out to me about this script was how it uses this analogy of tuning up a car. And it's not about waiting until, your relationship explodes or breaks down. It's about the kind of the regular maintenance to keep things running smoothly.
I love that because it makes communication feel less like this big, scary thing
Mhm.
and more about just these small but consistent efforts.
Exactly.
Like, you wouldn't wait for your car to totally break down before you change the oil, right? So why do we do that in our relationship sometimes?
It's so true. You don't want to wait for a massive blowout to finally, like, oh, we need to work on our communication.
Yeah, yeah.
And what I really appreciated is this script emphasizes that even those couples, those like, oh, they're so happy, they still argue.
Right,
That
right.
it's the way they communicate during disagreements that
Yeah.
makes them different.
It's reassuring to know that, like, conflict is normal. It's how you approach it. And that's where this whole active listening thing comes in, right? Because that's something that really resonated with me
Totally.
in this script.
It's so crucial. And yet, I think it's where a lot of us, myself included sometimes, really stumble.
Oh, for sure.
Because it's about truly listening to understand, not listening to respond, or, let's be honest, plan your amazing comeback in your head while the other person's talking.
Oh my gosh, I'm so guilty of that. It's like as soon as there's a pause, I'm like, quick, say something smart.
Yes.
But I've found that oftentimes the most helpful thing you can do is just listen without trying to like fix everything immediately.
Yeah.
There was this one time this close friend of mine was going through a really, really hard time and all they wanted to do was vent. And in the past, I might have jumped in with advice. But this time I just listened and I validated their feelings and it made a world of difference. Afterward, they even said, "Thank you so much for just, hearing me out, for not trying to fix it."
Wow.
It was a good reminder that sometimes just being present and truly listening is the best support you can offer.
That is such a good story, and I think it really highlights the difference between hearing and actually listening to understand.
Right.
And, going back to the car analogy,
Oh, yeah.
it's like a mechanic has to listen really carefully for those, like, weird sounds in your engine. We need to also listen for those subtle cues in conversation to really grasp what's going on.
Yeah, so it's not just about the words being spoken. It's about kind of the whole picture,
Exactly.
the tone, the body language. And speaking of the whole picture, this script talks about choosing the right time and place to have these big, important conversations. I feel like that's something people underestimate.
Oh, timing is everything. It's like trying to have a deep conversation while you're driving in rush hour traffic or something. You need to have the right headspace, the right environment to make sure that it's productive.
Right. Imagine trying to have like a serious relationship talk when you're both exhausted after a long day or like
Yeah.
kids are screaming in the background.
Exactly. You're setting yourself up for failure. It's about being mindful and choosing a time when you can both be fully present and engaged in that conversation.
So it's like setting the stage for a successful conversation, just like you would for an important meeting, right?
Exactly. And that's actually where the script's emphasis on nonverbal cues comes in.
Oh, okay.
Because did you know that 93% of communication is nonverbal?
Wait, 93%?
93%.
So you're telling me my words are basically meaningless?
Pretty much. No, I'm kidding. But it illustrates how important it is to make sure your words are lining up with what your body's doing.
Wow, okay. So it's like that saying, it's not what you say, it's how you say it, but like times 100?
Exactly. Your body language, tone of voice, your facial expressions, it all speaks volumes.
Right.
Think about it. If someone's like, oh yeah, I'm fine, but they are saying it with like clenched fists and a tight voice, are they really fine? Probably not.
Okay, yeah, that's a perfect example. I think we've all been there. Either sending those mixed messages or on the receiving end, like, wait, what are they really saying?
Yeah. So the script really emphasizes aligning your verbal and nonverbal communication, making sure those two things are saying the same thing, because that helps build trust and it helps make sure that your message is received the way you intended.
Yeah, because if I'm saying one thing but my body language is screaming something else, it's just going to create confusion. Like, what are you supposed to believe?
Exactly.
So how do you get better at like aligning those two things?
That's a great question, and the script offers some really good insights. One of the most effective strategies, I statements.
Oh, yeah.
Mike sounds
Oh,
like
yes, statements, yeah.
yeah,
Like communication 101.
it's a classic.
Yeah, but I'm always down for a refresher. What does the script say about it?
It goes beyond the typical explanation and gets into why they're so effective. Essentially, it's about shifting from blame to taking ownership of your own experience.
Okay, give me an example.
Okay, let's say you're frustrated because your partner is constantly leaving their stuff all over the house.
Oh, yeah, relatable.
Instead of saying, ugh, you always leave your things everywhere, it's so inconsiderate, which, let's be real, is probably just going to make them defensive. You could try this.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Hit me with it. What's the magic I statement here?
How about this? I feel frustrated when I see your things left out because it makes me feel like our shared space isn't respected. You see the difference there?
Okay, yeah. It's like the same message, but it's not like pointing the finger. It's more about how you feel.
Exactly. You're not attacking them.
Yeah.
You're simply communicating your own experience.
Mm.
And that makes it so much easier to actually have a productive conversation because they are less likely to just get defensive.
Right, because no one wants to be told they are wrong.
Right.
But if you say, hey, this is how this makes me feel, it opens up a different way to talk about it.
Absolutely. And the script also points out this misconception that being clear and direct with what you need is somehow rude.
Oh, tell me about it. Like, you should just automatically know what the other person's thinking.
Right. But actually, honesty and clarity, as long as it's expressed respectfully, is more considerate in the long run, you know?
It's like saying, I care enough to be upfront with you,
Exactly.
rather than like beating around the bush.
Exactly. It's recognizing that we can't expect other people to read our minds.
Yeah.
It's being able to advocate for your own needs while still being mindful and respectful of the other person.
Okay.
And the script actually gives a really great example of this. It uses the example of, like, maybe your partner's upset about something and you don't really get why it's such a big deal. Instead of being like, whatever, or dismissing it, you can say something like, hey, I understand this is really important to you, even if I don't totally get it right now, but let's talk about it
Yeah.
and figure out how to, work through this together.
Yeah, I love that. It's like validating their experience without minimizing your own.
Exactly.
It's finding that balance.
Exactly. And this ties back into, communication is relationship maintenance.
Okay.
Because just like you wouldn't ignore a weird sound coming from your car engine, right?
Right.
You shouldn't ignore those kind of subtle signs that something needs a little attention in your relationship.
Okay, so it's about addressing those small things before they snowball into major issues.
Yeah.
But how do you do that without feeling like you're constantly nitpicking?
That's a good question. The script suggests building in these kind of regular check-ins into your routine,
Okay.
whether it's with your partner, a friend, a family member, like just asking these little questions. How are we doing? Anything we need to, talk about? Something like that can go a really long way.
It's like a relationship tune-up.
Yes, I love that.
Instead of waiting till something breaks, you're just like popping the hood and being like, all right, everything runs smoothly in here.
Exactly. It's about being proactive, being intentional. Making communication a regular practice, not just something you do when there's already a problem.
Yeah, so it's not about being this perfect communicator. It's more about just being like a mindful communicator.
Yes, you got it.
Mhm.
Being mindful, putting in the effort, being present in those conversations.
This has been amazing. We talked about active listening, those nonverbal cues, the I statements. Oh, and picking the right time and place to have those important conversations.
And let's not forget, of course, the car analogy, because that really does sum it up.
It really does. So, as we wrap up here, I'm curious, what's the one thing that really resonated with you? The thing you are going to try to incorporate more in your own life?
For me, it's that reminder that clear, honest communication, it's not about being perfect.
Yeah.
It's about being intentional.
Yes.
It's about making that effort.
I love that. And it's not about like never messing up. It's about being willing to, learn and try again and just show up authentically in your relationships.
Absolutely. And even those small changes, those small shifts can make a huge difference over time.
So true. So for everyone listening, what's one small step you can take today to put some of this into practice? Maybe it's sending that "how are you doing" text. Maybe it's practicing that active listening during your next conversation, or just being a little more aware of your body language. Whatever it is, remember, even small changes can make a big difference. It's all about taking those little steps toward building healthier, happier relationships. That's it for our deep dive on communication. Until next time, keep those conversations flowing.